This week on A Lively Experiment, the cost of demolishing and replacing the Washington Bridge just got a lot more expensive. Or did it? And what local races and ballot questions do you have your eye on next month? Our panel weighs in on theirs.
A Lively Experiment is generously underwritten by...
Hi, I'm John Hazenwhite Jr. For over 30 years, A Lively Experiment has provided insight and analysis of the political issues that face Rhode Islanders. I'm a proud supporter of this great program and Rhode Island PBS.
Joining us on that panel, Providence Journal State House reporter Patrick Anderson, Boston Globe reporter and Rhode Island PBS weekly contributor Steph Machado, and Republican strategist Lisa Pelosi. Welcome into Lively. I'm Jim Hummel. You need a scorecard these days to keep up with the cost and timeline for the replacement of the Washington Bridge. The Rhode Island DOT issued a change order for demolition that more than doubles the original cost, but the director insisted in several interviews this week that the work was going to have to be done sooner or later. It reminds me of the old commercial. You can pay me now or you can pay me later. Patrick, it seems like we're paying them now and we might be paying them later.
Yeah, and then we're going to keep on doing it. It's just a drip, drip, drip of added costs. I mean, we knew this was in the mail because they've been making changes. They've been encountering all kinds of difficulties along the way in the demolition, in the procurement. All of those delays add to the cost. Every time you change everything, you add a little bit more to the cost. There are even a few more that are baked in, including paying for the pause that they just had for about a month that haven't been accounted for. So this number is just going to keep creeping up and up and up.
What I don't understand is I heard Peter Alvid in a couple of interviews this week on the radio and on television say, well, we didn't include taking out the footings. This is getting a little bit into the weeds, but into the muck probably of the Seekonk River. We were eventually going to have to do this, but now we're doing it now. Why wasn't that written in initially? Did you get...
I mean, they botched the first procurement about as bad as you can do it. So what went well with that? I mean, the first time they went out for bid, they essentially just tried to dump all of the risk on the contractor and say, do it faster than is humanly possible and take all of the risk if everything goes wrong and reuse this old part of the bridge so we don't have to tear it out at the same time. It was never feasible. And they basically, the industry has basically told them, no, we're not going for this. You did it wrong. Do over.
And I think you reported something earlier about the environmental impact just before we even knew that the pilings were needed to come out. So I don't know if that's been factored in, the cost of doing that and the timeline of delay that can happen too.
Yeah, well, the more you go into the river, the worse it is for environmental permitting. There are river herring that swim, this is probably more than people want to know, that swim back and forth up into the streams in East Providence and into Seekonk. And so the more you mess with the river, the more DEM and the feds will look at that. They say that they have a deal for the environmental permitting worked out. We'll see, but that's all. They want to minimize how much they muck around in the river because of that.
Well, and I'll push back on the notion that they were going to have to pay to remove the pilings anyway, because the original plan, again, that was totally botched and that no one bid on, was to leave the pilings and piers in the water, let the contractor decide whether to use them or whether to take them out. And so it wasn't a definitive...
On their dime.
I don't know if there would have had to be a change order or like how exactly that was going to get paid for, but it certainly wasn't in the original cost estimate to take the pilings and piers out of the water. Now they've added that to the demolition contract, and now the demolition is going to take much longer than expected, not finished until the end of 2025.
We thought we were going to talk about 38 studios for a long time. The Washington Bridge may eclipse all of that.
It's the gift that just keeps on giving, especially if you're writing on it. I think this is like job security for you going forward, how this is going to be turning out. And then to have the congressional delegation doing their job, getting the money, but based on what they thought the cost would be, and it seems like we're going to have to go back to the federal government for even much, much more money to get this covered right now.
Yeah, well, the big thing is the election coming up, the presidential election, because so far with the Biden administration, the federal government has been very accommodating to all of the trials and tribulations and payment issues that Rhode Island has had. But a Trump administration with a new director of transportation federally, might not be so happy about this, might not be awarding every grant that Rhode Island asks for and go along with the matching and not look too critically at the oversight of the bridge that led it to be broken in the first place.
Yeah, it was really important to get that money secured before the election in case a different administration, well, no matter what a different administration is coming in, but in case a Republican administration comes in that might be less friendly to a blue state. But it is, they're literally promising money on a project that we do not know how much it's going to cost. We don't even have a design for the bridge. So there's so many things up in the air in terms of how much this thing is going to cost. And it doesn't sound like we're going to have really clear answers on that anytime soon.
You both were at that news conference. It seems like a long time ago. Steph said off air it was just last week. It seems like a lot longer to me. That went on for almost an hour and a half, and then they had the community meeting that went on for almost 2.5 hours. It seems to me that they're getting the message they need to be a little bit more accessible.
I'm seeing, I would say, a little bit of a correction. I think that there was a lot of defensiveness coming from the McKee administration, a 100% backing of every move that they had made, every move that Director Alvid had made. And then we saw the governor give a really critical statement of Director Alvid when they had that community meeting that was actually like a 9-minute
9 minutes on Yom Kippur. No
presentation
questions.
on Yom Kippur, when obviously a lot of East Siders who are affected by the bridge celebrate that holiday, by the way, or observe that holiday. And he was very critical of the DOT director, and I don't think I've seen him be critical of the DOT director at all, this whole crisis. And so they had a very lengthy news conference. They took every question. They had a really long community meeting where they took a ton of questions. So I think they're trying to show that they are taking the frustrations of the community seriously.
A good step?
I think so. It's just been almost painful to watch how much they haven't been paying attention to the communication aspect of this. It just seems every step of the way that there's something that's been going on. It's such a delay to learn exactly what's going on. For example, those sensors that they put into the bridge to measure the impact of all the cars going over, they didn't announce that ahead of time that they were doing it. So it was like a stumble to let the public know, but we want to know everything about this bridge going forward. So it's just been one bad misstep after another since this started. And when you talk about Peter Alvid, I know I was on the show in January, and I said his days are numbered. So I guess I'm not good when it comes to predicting people's
Your
fate.
math is off a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the thing that just seems strange to me is that the only thing now that he has been criticized for by the governor is this Zoom call and the communications, but nothing about the underlying problem that caused this and all of the problems that have happened in the year, basically, since the bridge was closed. That has not brought in any public admonishment, just this Zoom meeting.
And Link Chafee set some people's hair on fire. He talked to your former colleague
Yes,
at Channel
yes.
12, Eli Sherman, and said, why is this guy still employed? Which I think a lot of us probably thought. But Link
Yeah.
Chafee said, and he recounted, actually, Link went back and remembered some of the crises over the years where there were fall guys. Gina Raimondo had to get rid of people because of UHIP.
And you often see cabinet secretaries step down over crises, even if they didn't really do anything super wrong personally, but the buck stops at the top, right? You often see these resignations when there's a big crisis, and so far Director Alvid has held on.
All right. We are just a couple of weeks out from the election. Locally, it's been a bit of a snoozer as the general officers are not up. There's a lot of ballot questions locally that you'll be going to. We have 5 on the state ballot and a couple of interesting General Assembly races, mayor's races. Lisa, what do you have your eye on in this election cycle?
So 2 of the mayoral races I'm paying attention to in Cranston. I want to see what happens with the incumbent, Ken Hopkins, after that kind of tough primary that he had with Barbara Ann Fenton-Fong. Also looking at Warwick, how that race is going to come. And then I brought in, will there be a Republican in East Greenwich voted? So they put out this flyer, it's okay to vote for balance, consider Republican. So I'll be seeing after November 5th if we have at least one Republican.
It was, but not that long ago, it was a mostly Republican council, wasn't it? And then it shifted.
Totally, yeah.
Yeah. What are you looking at, Patrick?
Well, I mean, to that, I mean, I think even broader, just how many Republicans are going to be in office across the state, going in all levels, from town councils and school committees to the General Assembly. I mean, there's not much of a chance above that, but Republicans could make some gains in the General Assembly, could maybe a seat or 2. and they still have to defend some of their open seats. So it probably won't change a lot, but it's always interesting just to see kind of how small that delegation could get, and will there be a strong or even a moderate-sized presence from Republicans in the state to keep that kind of Democrat-Republican dynamic alive?
Yeah, it is a quiet year locally, even though it's such a big year nationally. I don't think anyone will be surprised by the presidential results in Rhode Island. I'm watching this first ever in the modern era, at least, school board election in Providence. Providence voters have not gotten to elect the members of their school board for many, many decades. I'm trying to nail down the exact year, so come back to me. But this is likely going to be the group that takes control of the schools back in a few years. The people who are elected.
It's a 4-year term?
It's a 4-year term.
So for 3 years, they could be twiddling their thumbs, right?
And they better be planning, because if 2027 comes around and they get control of the schools back and they say they need another year to plan, then what were they elected to do? So they have a really long time after they get elected to plan to hit the ground running when they get the schools back in 2027, or maybe a little sooner. Commissioner Infante Green has said maybe it'll be sooner, and she says she's not going to go longer than 2027. So it's an important election, and I think it's been really quiet, not a lot of money in the race, even though it's 3 times the size of a city council.
Are they expanding the seats, or is it the same number of seats?
It's going to be 10 seats, so expanded by 1.
Okay. 5
seats will be elected, and 5 seats will be appointed by Mayor Smiley in December. And so we will know before January who the 10 people are going to be. And it's important, but there hasn't been a lot of, haven't seen a lot of mailers. There's been a lot of, door knocking and on the ground campaigning. So we'll see what happens.
Where are you on the Constitutional Convention?
I'm in favor of it. I believe the voters should have the right to bring that, if they have issues on their mind that the General Assembly are not addressing, that they should be able to do it. So I like to see it be approved this year. I was looking at how it was written in the Voters Handbook, and it's very interesting to me that the question of for or reject is to amend or revise. But when you read the description of it, they go into the potential of it be totally rewritten. And I don't think anyone ever was going into this thinking that we were going to totally rewrite the Constitutional Convention. So to me, I thought that was a little bit alarming for them to include
that. Was the one the Secretary of State sent out.
Yeah.
Well, and the other thing that I found a little disingenuous, and Patrick, you've seen this, the Speaker of the House, Joe Sakarchi, came out with a statement we're taping on Friday, on Thursday, saying, and this could cost millions and millions of dollars, and we're always worried about money. This is a guy who added $250 million to what the governor proposed last year. Now, $3-4 million, sure, that could go to worthy programs, but to all of a sudden cry poverty. I know he's against it philosophically, but then to pull the financial card, I found a little bit tough to swallow.
Yeah, I don't think that's the primary objection to this.
No, I think he's, but to throw that in there, we're watching out for your money, please.
Yes. I think the main reason is that the current situation works very well for him, obviously, and the other members of the General Assembly and the Democrats in charge. And to the point of the money, it's almost, I can see them being a little worried, and I think I've made this point before, just about the actual mechanics of it and how messy it could be. You've seen how difficult it is for the state sometimes to organize things to go right and have projects come off. You do have to actually form this little shadow legislature and give them a staff and find a place for them to work, and they've got to do all this stuff, and who knows what kind of hijinks could go on. And the last time they did this, they did run out of money. After a couple of months, they couldn't pay the staff. There was this whole, it could get really weird. So I understand how they just would not want that whole mess of deciding whether people get paid, whether the delegates get paid, there's just a lot of stuff that could go wrong with this, which is why no state has done it since we did it in '86.
The only thing I wonder is, bond issues always pass in Rhode Island. The only one I remember is, I think it was for the Heritage Hall of Museum years ago, back where the old Narragansett Electric is. I'm dating myself. I wonder as people go in, there's no master lever anymore, but, the Constitutional Convention, if they're not paying attention, check on all the bonds, whether it could pass the back door.
There was a bond that failed last year in North Kingstown for a new police station and something to do with pickleball.
But they married it all together.
New school. Yeah, they people were just I think some people are sick of being asked every year for hundreds of millions of dollars for this, that, and the other thing. And then sometimes the building doesn't come to fruition in the way that they promised because of cost overruns and inflation and rising interest rates.
Like Warwick. They're trying to build 2 high schools.
Warwick, Warwick voters approved, I can't remember the number off the top of my head. Thank you. A lot of money to build 2 high schools, and now they're saying that they need another $38 million, or they can't build, in order to do the project as promised, and that's a lot of money. So I don't know if people go down the list and say yes, 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 yes. Obviously, because it's a presidential election year, turnout is going to be higher than midterm, and there will be people going to vote for president who maybe don't know about the local ballot issues as much as the voters who go to vote in these smaller election years. So we'll have to see.
I think just to Steph's point, a big thing, and it goes back to this North Kingstown bond, is that there was actual organized opposition to that. And the big thing I think I see with all of these questions is that there is right now so far not organized opposition to the bonds, and there's no organized opposition, barring a late surprise, we've still got a week to go, in favor of the Constitutional Convention. And I think that is what makes people think it's very, very unlikely to pass, because you have most people don't know what it is and are confused by it. But the only thing that they are hearing in the last couple of weeks is this could be the end of the world. This is terrible.
From
and there's
Democrats.
No one,
they're hearing it from Democrats.
Right. And there's nothing on the other side making any kind of public case on the airwaves or in mailers or anything like that of why they would want it.
We'll know in 2 weeks. Steph had an interesting article in the Boston Globe published today on Friday, front page. Congratulations. Okay. Is using AI cheating in school? It's an interesting concept. We were talking a little bit before we came on air. You used to have those programs that college professors, what was it, turnitin.com. And now, where does AI fit in? It's a tough question.
It's a tough question, and I think what we learned in exploring the story was that, state education departments have been very slow to issue any sort of guidance to school districts about should you allow AI to be used, in what capacity should you allow it, where's the line between using it as a useful tool for research versus, basically cheating on an assignment. And the jumping off point for the story was this a court case out of Hingham where a student got a bad grade on paper because he used AI on his outline for the paper, and the teacher determined that that's plagiarism and gave him, I think he got detention and a bad grade, and he's now suing, saying this
was his dad a lawyer?
Who knows? He's saying, this wasn't in the handbook. This is going to affect my college prospects. My GPA went down. I have to now explain this as I apply to colleges. And so it really spurred, it was a talker, the story, and it spurred a lot of conversation about it. And we talked to a number of teachers who said, it had not been contemplated until my students started using AI, and I realized that I needed to set rules for my own classroom. Here's when you can use AI. Here's when you can't use AI. You have to cite exactly how you used it. And a lot of schools just haven't thought about it yet. They've banned ChatGPT on their computer networks, but students are using this in their regular lives. You can talk to an AI chatbot in the Snapchat app. There's a lot of ways that teens have very easy access to this technology. So schools have to figure out how it fits in.
Lisa?
You got to figure out how to incorporate the technology because it's out there, it's going to be used. And I think, not to simplify it, but it should just be referenced. So I think what happened was some of the students were using the AI totally not referencing it and saying, this is my work.
Cut and paste.
Yeah, and this is my work. So I know years ago when I was in grad school, Wikipedia was just starting to come out. So you had to cite Wikipedia. The professors wanted to make sure you did that. So it's just making sure that you're citing something that's not your own work. But I think the AI can really be helpful, and the professors and the teachers, because I'm talking from a university level too, because it's being dealt on a university level. And you just got to figure out how to incorporate it into your curriculum.
I would not want to have to deal with figure out I don't know what the solution is.
Hello, you have a child in elementary school. The train's coming at you, sir.
I know, and I'm just staring right at the headlight. I mean, I don't know what the answer is about AI, but even before that, I am surprised that there hasn't been more of a debate in Rhode Island about phones in schools. I thought some candidate somewhere would make that an issue of we should ban these. And like some places they are, some places they aren't. I know in Connecticut, Ned Lamont came out with a big, we should get phones out of schools. And I've asked the governor about it, and education is his number one topic. And he doesn't, this Governor McKee, and he didn't really have any thoughts about it. I'm just surprised no one has like picked that up as a baton of like, we should get them out.
Yeah, I did a story about that for Rhode Island PBS Weekly, focused on Central
Falls,
where they put the phones in the pouches. And, there was a little bit of opposition. I believe it came from Lincoln, where they said, well, in the real world, your phone's not in a pouch, so you have to learn how to live with the technology. But honestly, most of the people I talked to were really in favor of kids.
The Los Angeles School District decided, since your story, the entire district said, not because of your story, maybe, they said, this is it, it's too much of a distraction.
Yeah, and I hear from teachers all the time who are like, I'm so glad the phones are gone, because it's so much, like, for the teachers to have to constantly say, get off your phone, get off your phone, get off your phone, listen to me, is such a time suck in their day. And so, but at the same time, technology is growing and it should be used in education, so there's a balance.
Yeah. And they'll have to ban the watches too at some point.
Yeah. They do. In Central Falls, you have to put your, if you have a smartwatch, it also goes in the pouch, and your AirPods, very important, because otherwise you listen through the pouch to your music.
Kids are very sneaky. Isn't your daughter doing that when she goes to bed? She's listening, like
probably,
I used to listen to the Red Sox game under my pillow with the transistor radio. All right, let's do outrages and or kudos, and I got one other thing I want to get to. Patrick, let's begin with you this week.
Well, I don't know whether this is an outrage or a kudo. It could kind of be both, but the Independent Man statue, which I think is on one of the images behind you, which is normally on top of the State House dome and has been down for repairs, to be restored and then to fix the top of the dome that it stands on, was supposed to be back on top of the State House in fall. That was the last update we got. That was in the spring. So it's fall, and I don't know when and where the Independent Man is going to be put back up. I've asked and haven't gotten an answer yet. So that could be bad and outrage that they don't get the Independent Man up back when they said they would. Or maybe the Independent Man, which people like taking photos of and like standing in front of, will be there for everyone at Christmas. And this is a positive thing, that people can make Christmas cards and go visit the Independent Man for longer, and it's actually good. So maybe it's a kudo. I don't.
You're a man for all seasons. You could go both ways on that.
And this one,
maybe they want to save him one more winter out in the cold. Lisa, what do you have?
So I don't know if I have a kudos or an outrage too.
Oh, here we go.
So here we are. So, looking at how the candidates in these last couple of weeks are trying to engage voters into the campaign. So on the Democrat side, we have people like Taylor Swift and Oprah, now Beyonce today, and Eminem. Springsteen, Usher. So, and then on the Republican side, we have Elon Musk, who came up with what appears to be this $1 million raffle scheme to get registered voters in the key battleground states to sign a petition and be eligible for this $1 million. I mean, this is borderline illegal, and we won't know if it is or not until after the election. And if it is, he'll have a fine of $10,000, which for him is probably coffee money.
Yeah, it's crazy. Steph, what do you have?
Well, we didn't get to the gas station story, but I'll peel back the onion a little bit on the reporting process of, the City of Providence City Council wanted to do a ban on future gas stations in the city, not existing ones. And it's an environmental thing, so setting aside the debate about environmentally whether we should still have gas stations, all of that, I asked the most basic reporter question ever, which was send me a list of the licensed operating gas stations in the city. Presuming, of course, if you're going to ban any type of business, you must have studied how many do we have? Where are they? Do we have enough? Nothing. To this day, this was a couple weeks ago, I wrote the story, never got me the list, never got me the number of gas stations. And
was that the council or the administration?
Both.
Yeah.
Well, the administration, and in fairness, the council came up with it's their proposal.
Right, so the administration doesn't really.
It's their proposal,
right.
but the policy people, the councilman who proposed the ban, couldn't get me anything. It was purely we're going to take this stance that we don't want more gas stations and we want to use that land for housing. It ended up ending in a compromise. They are not fully banning gas stations, but now if you want to build a new gas station, you have to have a special use permit, and it's only if the land is unsuitable for housing. So
It almost seems,
that's how it ended.
Well, it was also, what was the deal? They didn't want to have any more storage units. Because
Yeah.
they said the land's being taken up that we could use for housing. Did they ever do that or not?
They did. Yep,
Yeah.
they did. And actually, one of your colleagues, I think Wheeler, had done a story about how some people want to roll that ban back. So I haven't covered that particular one.
Where are people going to put all their junk if they don't have storage units?
I guess I just assume that if you're going to ban any type of business, regardless of, I understand they're doing it on environmental grounds, but I was like, oh, you didn't
have a metric.
You didn't do like a market demand study? Like, people still have cars, and not everyone can afford an electric car. So I was just surprised that no business or market analysis went into that.
Where did people put their junk before self-storage?
I think everyone needs to do the Marie Kondo and get rid of their junk, and then we wouldn't need any self-storage units.
The hoarding shows, that's where it came from. Patrick, we just have a couple of minutes left. There's been a little palace intrigue at the Senate, and it's kind of spilled out now with Senate President Dominic Ruggerio basically has said his majority leader's on the outs. He wants to replace him. But Ryan Pearson seems to think that he has a shot of maybe hanging on. How's that going to work?
I don't know about that. I mean, I think he might have to just make sure he has a parking spot when he gets in. But yeah, I mean, this, aside from Majority Leader and Ryan Pearson, the big question is just who is going to run the Senate, be in charge of the Senate next year and beyond. And Dominic Ruggerio says he's fully in control, and it's going to be him, and there's nothing to see here. But the fact that no one has seen him really in public, and there are still questions about whether he is up to that, are going to remain at least until the big caucus Democratic caucus after the election, where everyone will be watching to see, does he walk into the room, does he show senators, I'm here, I'm back, you can feel confident of giving me your vote to lead the Senate, and that you're not doing something weird and like voting for someone who's not going to be there.
Probably wouldn't be a good look if they wheeled him in a wheelchair, right? That probably wouldn't be a good optic.
I mean, that would be better than if he wasn't there at all and asked them to vote for an empty chair.
Right, because he didn't show up for a lot of the
No, he didn't.
session.
He was calling in talking to folks, but not physically showing up, to do that. So, I think it just comes down to relationships, and I don't know how much Senator Pearson has developed relationships over the past couple of years that he's been, the leader there. Does he have that support that he can transfer to him, or does Dominic Ruggerio still have that strong hand over the senators going forward?
If the Senate president's saying this is the person I want rather than you.
Right, exactly. And it seems like Pearson and Ruggerio's relationship has been irreparably damaged. Pearson came on the Rhode Island Report podcast this week and said things that he had not revealed before about that infamous meeting in March at Ruggerio's house. And he seems to think he still has a shot. I watched during the primary how many senators, were campaigning for Ruggerio, including progressives, so he seems to still have a lot of support.
All right, folks, that is all the time we have. We do appreciate your spending part of your weekend with us. Lisa, good to see you, and Patrick and Steph. We're heading into the home stretch to Election Day, locally and particularly on the national level. So stick with us. We'll have a full analysis of everything that goes on over the next week, and join us back here next week as the Lively Experiment continues. Have a great weekend.
A Lively Experiment is generously underwritten by...
Hi, I'm John Hazen White Jr. For over 30 years, A Lively Experiment has provided insight and analysis of the political issues that face Rhode Islanders. I'm a proud supporter of this great program and Rhode Island PBS.